Hello and welcome back to another episode of 100 Days of Code with me, Lily Code. Today we are continuing on with our form. We created a form yesterday, and what we did was when we clicked the submit button, our form is supposed to pop up with our name, our email and our favourite colour, because we have an on submit on this button. And the on submit is in line, and we should be getting this alert. So do you know what I'm going to do first of all actually is, we'll see now here when I enter my information and submit, I do not get the alert, so something is wrong, but I have an idea. So Lily Code Official is my official email at gmail.com, and feel free to drop me a line, send me an email. I would love to hear from you guys. So when I click submit, I should get an alert. That's what we have told this inline function to do. So what I'll do, instead of making this an inline function, I will cut this and put it into our own submit handler instead. So const form submit handler is an arrow function. And in here, we will add the code that we want to run on submit. So what we can see here is this was our inline on submission handler. So what we want to do is we are taking in an event here. So we'll take in our event the same way. And then what we want to do is we can now remove this, because rather than doing it on submit like this, we are actually passing in the event slightly differently. So first things first, we'll prevent the default action. So we'll say event.prevent default. So this should now be event, because we're not calling our event E, we've just changed the name, we're passing it in as event. So event is what we need here. And then this event should pass in this information from our name, email and colour values. So here's our name value, here's our email value, and here is our colour value. So now if we add our on submit to this button and pass it our form on submit handler instead, we've just run this outside of being in line of the submit button. So let's do it like that instead. And it seems like we have an error, so that's okay. What's our error? Unexpected token on line 18. So yes, I just have too many parentheses here. So we have our closing parenthesis for our alert being opened here, and then we just need one closing curly bracket, so everything else can go these two parentheses here. And now if we save, hopefully our error should be gone. Yes. And now let's see what happens. Lily, email, color. So we're still not getting an alert. That's also okay. So I'm going to add a console log to see if it's coming in here, you know, which it should be, but right now I'm not sure. So I'll say console log, and let's log out the event to see what's being passed in as well. And that's fine, that's just our string. So event, this word needs to be spelled correctly, because this is a direct link to this. We want to actually console log out that event. Whereas here what we're doing is just console logging out a string. So although it shouldn't be spelled wrong, if it is, it doesn't matter because it's just a string. So probably no harm in just leaving it like that, so you can see the difference, you know. And we can put anything in here. We don't have form validation at the moment. And it looks like it's not running that. We're not hooked up. So on my actual form, isn't that where I put my on submit? Here. So let's say, I think the on submit can be on the form itself. And now let's say, and color yellow. And I'll also just add another console log to just say that we are in the form component, or in the form submit handler. So in form submit handler function. So now we'll know if we've come in here, we should have just a string console logging out, and then also we should really get the event as well. So let's see. Brilliant. Okay, so great. So we found our error there. The problem was that we were hooking up this on submit to the button, whereas we actually need our on submit to be on the form itself. So okay, great. There's another thing to take a note of, so I'll just do that. Okay, great guys. So we have our form submitting and we have our alert showing. So now we're going to continue on and create another form with Sean. So this form is going to be called an uncontrolled form. Uncontrolled form page. .js, and we'll just set it up like we always do. So we'll export const uncontrolled with a capital U, uncontrolled form page, and arrow function as always. So this should actually be equal to an arrow function, and perfect. And we have our return statement here. That for the moment we'll just add an empty JSX fragment to get rid of any errors that we see there. Oh yes, that dot is certainly throwing us off. That shouldn't be there. This dot here. And now we should get rid of our errors. Perfect. So just watching and following along. Cool. So we want a form element, and in here we'll have a h3, so just a header that will say please enter your information. Okay. And we'll have very similar input to what's in our controlled form. So I'll just copy this for the moment, the whole thing, and paste it into this page. Perfect. And let's continue. Okay, and I'm going to delete the value and on change because this is the part that makes this a controlled form. So we're going to just get rid of those for the time being and see what is an uncontrolled form. How does that operate? So we'll get rid of these and we will continue to learn. So great. Here we go. So in an uncontrolled form, we use state. Hold on. We use ref instead of using the value. So this is what I would have been used to from Max's courses. He uses the use ref. So now we get to see that unfold, which is great. This links into yesterday's video, because in yesterday's video, I was trying to use ref because I thought that this was how it should be done, and turns out that this is an uncontrolled form, so there's a slight difference. So we've made the control form. Let's see the uncontrolled form and the use ref, which is the approach I would be more familiar with. Instead of using use state, we use something called refs, which is a reference to that specific element in our DOM. So we create these using use ref, which comes from React, so we can do that. So we'll say const name input equals use ref. Or createRef. It should be createRef. Aha. Is that where I went wrong yesterday then? And we need one for our email and for our color. And we need to CLOUR, and the American spelling is CLOR. And unfortunately, or not unfortunately, but you just need to remember that that's how it's spelled in CSS. whoever created CSS must have been somebody American, so it's just something you need to remember, because we actually don't spell colour like that so in Ireland or in England, so just to be aware of that, dependent on where you're from. If you're spelling colour CLOUR, you will have problems with your CSS. You spell it the American way. So then we just link up these refs. So on this input here, we'll say ref equals, and this will be our name input. Then we'll add a ref to our email. So ref is equal to email input. And then on our color, we'll just say ref equals color input. Perfect. Cool. Okay, cool. So again, on the button, we're going to do an inline function here. So let's give this a go. So we'll say onClick is equal to, and we want to pass this an object, and we'll say alert. Open up our parentheses, add our backticks. Add our backticks, cool. And we'll say your name is, so we say your name is, and then add our dollar, and open up our JSX syntax name input.current.value. Then we have your favorite color is, so I'll just duplicate and duplicate, and we should obviously close, well maybe not obviously, but these should close this line here. So and close, and then we can get rid of this one floating about. Why are they coming down? I just want them to stay where they are. Stay where you are there now, stay where you are. And seems to not like this, so let's just move this up. Okay, so we'll figure out what's going on there. Why do you keep popping down? Oh, I need a comma. Okay, so these need to be separated by a comma. And so this should be your email is, and then we send out the email value. So email, which this is how you send it out when you're doing it with the uncontrolled forms and the ref. So this is going to be favorite color, and we'll just say color input here. So okay, and then we have our closing backtick, our closing parentheses, our semicolon, and yeah, we're looking okay, even though we have errors. Aha, so that's what's wrong. This needs to be a function. Okay, so we're going to take in our event, and okay, right, grand. So that makes sense now. Yep, we were just forgetting that function. So now everything is okay, because we could see we were getting, something was going a bit awry there, but we just forgot to add our function. So now everything looks good. Perfect. And then we want to prevent the default behavior. So in here we'll just say e.prevent default. Perfect. Lovely. Cool. And we also need to export our uncontrolled form page from our index.js. So we will do that, so we can access this from other places. We've just added them all to an index file and exported them all from here. So perfect. Okay. Cool. Okay, and then we'll also import this now into our app.js. So we can use this. So underneath our controlled form page here, I'll just duplicate this line and change it to uncontrolled form page. And this can be uncontrolled form, uncontrolled hyphen form. So this will be the URL that we access this particular component at. And was it imported? No. So I will duplicate this as well and just change the name there. So uncontrolled form page. Perfect. Save. Great. createRef is not defined. Yes, we do not use createRef. It's called useRef. I'm sure of that. So let's try you, or did we just not? We didn't import it. Okay, so let's try and import it first. And I think it could be useRef, or am I wrong? Now if I save. So let's go to uncontrolled form page and see what happens. Go to the root for this particular component. Okay, great. Please enter your information. Yep, this is our page. I'll just add some exclamation marks there. Yeah, so we're on the right page. Great, we've managed to root here. And let's test this out. So Lilly. We don't have any validation at the moment, so these could literally be any values. And we get our pop-up, so super. We're getting somewhere, we're getting somewhere. Okay, great guys. So we'll just continue on here now and see what we're going to do next. Because that's the end of that lesson. So now we're building a side navigation bar. Cool. Great, so now we're going to look at nested React routers as well. So that's exciting. Wonderful. Okay, yeah, so when we have a navigation bar or something, we want that to show on all routes of our page, not just on a particular route. So we're going to set that up now. So how we would make this work is we put it outside of any of our routes on the page. So like these links, these are outside of our routes and they show on all the pages. So we'll do something similar to create a navbar. So first of all, we'll start by creating our Navbar component. So we'll create a new file. And we'll call this navbar.js. Cool. Great, so here we'll set up our navbar. So we'll say export const, as always, export const navbar. Ay, mamma mia, navbar. My fingers sometimes like to do their own thing. And like so. And then in here, we'll have an unordered list. Well, first of all, we will return. All he's done is use his parentheses again. So let's try this, an unordered list with list items inside. And the first list item is going to be a link to, and we'll pass the bada bing, the URL. So the first link is going to be to home. So we'll just say home here. And we'll copy and paste this a few times. So great. So then we'll have another link here to counter. And let's change this to counter. And another link that links to the people list page. So people list. Perfect. And here we will just say counter button. And people list. Cool. And we want to link to our controlled form and our uncontrolled form also. So let's add those in. So controlled form and uncontrolled form. So why not? Let's paste this down below. So uncontrolled form, and our link to this is just form. And then we have uncontrolled form as our link to our uncontrolled form. So uncontrolled form. Perfect. So that's our Navbar component, and now we want to actually use this in our app.js. But first of all, what we need to do is import a few things here. So the first thing we need is our link. So we'll import React from React. This isn't necessary, but let's add it in today. And in this same import now, because our link comes from React, we can add in our link import as well. So perfect. And now in our app.js, we can import this Navbar component. So do we need to export it from our index page? Yes, we do. So I'll export it from here as well. So I will export Navbar from same level Navbar. Cool. And save, and now we can import that into our app.js. So we'll just add it into this same list, and this is getting quite long now, so let's give it a bit of bada bing bada boom baby and move these down. Cool. And I'll add one more comma and our navbar. Perfect. And now we can use this. Okay, cool. So any links we have in a React navigation do need to be within the browser router, but if we want to show it on all pages, it shouldn't be within the routes. So up here is the right place for this. Okay, cool. So we have our navbar here. Now we do not need these two links because we're going to create a standalone navbar. We don't need just standalone links. So I'll self-close this, delete the closing tag because that's sufficient, and then we'll just wrap everything else in a div for now. So here's a div, and we'll put our other routes within here so we can add a bit of styling to everything else. So let's cut this, put it inside our div, and give this div a class name. So we'll say class name and this will be app header. App header, like so. Cool. So seems we have an error. Let's reload and check out what's going on. Expected a string for built-in components but got undefined. You likely forgot to export a component, or you might have mixed up default imports and exports and imports. Check out the render method of navbar. So navbar is just going like so. Do you know what? I'm going to do it the way I know, which is with a function and then return this. So let's see how that goes for us, and then return this block of code. And we jumped somewhere else by accident there. So now I open up my parentheses and put this stuff inside. So we're explicitly saying what we want to return, because we do have our export. It said you've mixed up the imports and exports. And do we have everything in here that we need imported? So our link should be from React Router DOM, not from React. So that was definitely probably giving us some errors. So import link from React Router DOM. There we go. And let's see how that's behaving now. Are you behaving yourselves? You are. Wonderful. So they're being good. We can see our app header CSS being added to all the components that aren't in the navbar. We can see our unordered list here shown on the screen. So we're just going to remove the bullets and stuff like that, I imagine. But can we navigate to pages? We actually can. Absolutely brilliant. So there we go. That's all still working. And we'll continue. Cool. It's hard to remember to sit up straight sometimes, you know, but it's so important that we must remember. So whenever I get the little brainwave, I just sit up straight. So if you're wondering why I'm like down, up, great. So yes, so we have our navigation bar, it is working, and now we're going to look at doing nested routers in React. Great. Okay, cool. So we'll test out this nested. We'll check out our nested navigation by checking this on our routes for our control form and uncontrolled form. So rather than having control form and an uncontrolled form, these two, apologies, we will instead nest these all under form. So that's what we're going to set up now. Cool. So we have a top level path called forms, and then within this we nest another router. So let's close off this route like so. Yes. And then within here, is that what we do? Okay, so this is what Sean is doing, but we do know there's been some updates to the layout of how we actually use our React DOM. There's been a change to how we use this React Router DOM. So it looks like this has changed again. So let's just go and check the documentation, because this is now different. So React Router DOM nested routes. I'm just going to look for this and see what we're being shown here. So here we go. Nested routes, Stack Overflow. Give the following sandbox. Not sure how to render the BB component. Yes, so he has A and B. Element AA and BB. Okay. Outlet that you must use inside your parent route so that any nested children can be rendered inside it. So where do I see this? Outlet. Aha. Okay, so we use that within the component itself. Additional note. Route path A, element A, B, BB will render. Read more here. Let's see what the read more here is going to bring us to. Okay, nested routes and layouts. In a large app, it's nice to be able to spread out. I'll just zoom in here. Spread out your route definitions across multiple routes so you can do code splitting more easily. But in a smaller app or with nested components that are closely related, you may just want to see all of your routes in one place. Let's continue with the previous code example. We will combine all of the routes into a single routes declaration by taking the routes that were defined in our users and hoisting them up into app. We'll use outlet in users where the routes used to be rendered Used to be to render the child routes. Okay. So here we go. Here we're using an ID. Here's our user's index. So this is our main. Okay, so this is how we do it. Cool. And then outlet is used in the users page. Okay. So what I think we're going to do here is, but we don't have a forms standalone component to add this outlet to. So does that mean that outlet goes into the parent, which in this case would be our app component? Let's try that. So instead, we'll copy outlet. Outlet seems like it goes in the parent component. So I'll stop what I'm doing here for a moment because that's wrong. And let's see what we're doing. So we have route and then routes inside the route. So we've got our forms. We don't have a parent forms though. So some days you're, flying, and other days you're not flying. And today is a day I'm not really flying. So, and that's okay, but this is figuring stuff out, which is okay. That's what coding is. So let's see. Look, a guide to version 6, major changes compared to version 5. So this looks good. Okay. Comes with some new features as well as improvements. Routes instead of switch, nested routes. Cool. Relative route path and link to use navigate routes instead of switch. Nested routes. Now version 6, nested routing is simpler. Used to be very extremely defined, which requires string matching. Now we can nest components declaratively. Okay, so this was version 5. So if you were at the home page and you wanted to navigate to a specific customer, this is what you would do. And then, or a user, you would do this, and then in your user component you specify that you want to take in the particular user's ID. So okay, and then in version 6 you just nest them. Root and link, which are under the roots element, are automatically relative to the parent root that rendered them. This makes it a lot easier to think about your React Router app as lots of smaller apps that are just stitched together at different mount points. Okay, so let's try this instead. So what we want here is we have our home. Our home is going to be our top, our home component here. So okay, so we have /home. Cool. And then within home we want to add our forms. So within here we'll add both of our forms. And let's tab in. And really it should just be underneath the slash. And we'll tab in, and then this is going to be root path. Okay, so it's still root path. We have forms. Okay, so dot forms and dot uncontrolled form. And then just the element. Uncontrolled. Okay, so let's save and see if we can navigate to these. Okay, so great, that still works. So Okay. I'm still not certain if that's perfect. No routes matched uncontrolled form. Link is defined but never used in app.js. Okay. Okay, so uncontrolled form. Let's make sure we spelt this correctly in our navbar. So here we have our uncontrolled form. And do we need to change? Let's reload this page. Okay, great. So we just had it spelled wrong. So this is it. We have nested forms now, even though it doesn't look any different. Okay. Okay. So let's try that. So what we want to do, so where's our forms going? We just have slash forms. Okay. So what we've actually done is, rather than have this forward slash, what Sean has done is said, first of all, we have a forms, which is going to be, like, I don't know what the element is though. So we'll say forward slash forms and keep it at the home page because we don't have a forms component. And then we'll say forward slash forms, forward slash controlled will be our controlled form page. So controlled. And then we'll have forward slash forms, forward slash uncontrolled, which just means we need to also update our navigation to those particular forms. So in our navbar here now, instead of form, we have controlled and uncontrolled because I changed those, controlled and uncontrolled. And let's save and see now if we navigate, will it add the forward slash form? No. Okay. What about if we go to forward slash form? This should bring us to our home page. No routes matched location form. But yeah. Okay, so where are we calling? Aha, yeah, so this should be forms, which would bring us to the home page. And then if we go to controlled form, it should be forms. So let's see how he's going to actually specify this. Okay, so we just haven't created our main forms page, so we need to create a new file here called forms navbar .js, and then this is going to be our home form page. So where we have this forward slash forms here back in our navbar, back in our app, sorry, where we have this forward slash forms, this will now point to our forms navbar. So we will do that. Okay, so we said we're just going to copy and paste our navbar code into there. So let's do that. And then this is going to be forms navbar because it's a new component, forms navbar. And we wanted to only have 2 links, right? So this is how you hook it all up then. Cool, I just hadn't watched far enough. So if I get rid of this now, our other links, then we're going to have controlled and uncontrolled. Perfect, this makes sense now. Controlled and uncontrolled. Now there still might be some discrepancies because this approach has since changed. Sean is using a different version of React Router DOM. Controlled form, this is going to be the link form, and then uncontrolled form in the bottom one here. So uncontrolled, save. Cool, so let's reload and see where we're at now. No routes match exact location, controlled. because I also need to say that this forms is now linked up to our forms navbar. Forms navbar, perfect. That's been imported. So now we do have a matching route that matches form. So let's reload. Okay, I think I'm mixing and matching approaches here because Sean is telling us one thing and I'm trying to piece together the pieces of, well, how do we actually do this? So we do need to pass in the actual /forms in here as well. So /forms and then /controlled and /form/uncontrolled. So let's try that. Let's reload. Go back to our console so we see any errors. Okay, so it still doesn't like that. No routes match /controlled. What about now if we do the ... And what about here if we do a ... Will it piece together that information? Is that what we are missing? Looks like it, but we're still getting some warnings. So, or no, we're not. Look, we've done it. But why don't I see /forms up here? Because that's what should be happening. So I'll keep watching rather than going off on a tangent this time and see what Sean's going to do and piece together this information. Okay, and then in our app, where did we import? Did we import our forms navbar? So forms navbar, yes, we did import that from forms navbar. So cool. Yes. Okay. Yeah. And then in our navbar, okay, we have a link just to the forms. So there should be 2 forms, and then our link can say forms. And let's see what happens now. Oh, okay, we're getting somewhere, people. We are getting somewhere. Great. Okay, so in our forms navbar. Okay, so now let's go back to the documentation because now it's starting to come together. So in our thing here, then within our users, we had to have an outlet. So that means within our forms, we have to have an outlet. So in our forms navbar, yes. Here we add outlet. No. Well, yes, here we add outlet. We just need a wrapping fragment because we still need to have a top level item. So I'll cut and paste this and see what happens. So now it knows what's going on. Outlet is not defined, so this needs to be imported from, I presume, React Router DOM, yes. So outlet, perfect, save. Now what happens if we go to, okay, great. Cool. So here do we use the ... as well? Let's go back to the, well, let's just try and save this first and see. So forms uncontrolled. No. Okay. So let's go back to this documentation. So link to me. Then within our forms component, we should just have the name of it. So in our forms navbar, we should say link to uncontrolled. No need for any / or anything. We just give the name of the link. And then in our app.js, we make sure that we have these, just the name actually. So they should be uncontrolled and controlled and save. And let's see, forms, uncontrolled, Not quite yet. Console. Forms, controlled. Not quite yet. Okay, we're getting closer. So, forms, controlled. Okay. So let's tab these in because these are actually within there, and let's go back to this documentation and just see what's happening here. So we have our route path to our forms. Cool. He's not using forward slashes. So let's take that out for a moment. If we're going to do one approach, let's stick with the approach, even though the rest of this component is doing it differently, but that's okay until we figure out what's going on. So this should be our forward slash forms. No, I think that's correct. And then we have route path me. Should be the own user's profile. So controlled and uncontrolled. And then within our users component, so our top level, our forms navbar, we have linked to the name of those components, and we add the outlet. Okay. Didn't change anything, so I'm not expecting to see any different behavior. Okay. So let's go to the official documentation for React Router DOM. Router DOM. Cool. And I just want the actual docs, which is from npm. It's an npm package, so we can find our documentation in here, which links us to a GitHub page. So nested routes. Let's search for the nested area. You may have noticed when clicking links in the layout, app disappears. Repeating shared layouts is a pain in the neck. We've learned that most UI is a series of nested layouts. Let's set some automatic persistent layout handling. Nest the routes inside of the app route, render and outlet. Okay, so we need render as well, it seems. Okay, so let's import render into our app.js. Okay. Where are we using render? Render here. So then rather than this being a return, we are rendering. So render. I think I've gone off on another tangent. Let's not do that. Okay. Let's think a bit slower here. When routes have children, it does two things. It nests the URLs. We'll nest the UI components for a shared layout when the child route matches. However, before we will need to render an outlet in the parent route. So the outlet goes into the parent. Let's try and add it in here and just see if that does anything for us. And then it needs to be imported. So outlet, and it is coming from React Router DOM, so okay. Okay. Alright. Now click around again. Parent will persist while the outlet swaps between the two routes. Okay, I'm going to keep watching the video for a minute and see what else Sean does, because I'm not certain. And the brain just isn't on full firing capacity today. Hold on. Yeah. Yes. So we have our /forms in our navbar. Yes. Okay. Then in our forms navbar, we have our links to our individual forms. Okay. Okay, and let's just take out outlet here because I do think it should be here. I think outlet should be there, not in the app.js, because our parent of our forms is our forms navbar. We've given it another parent, which is the forms navbar. Okay. Okay, so that's the basics of how nested routers work in React. He's finished talking about that. So therefore, your girl's not sure. Let's continue. Let's just continue to try and figure this out ourselves here. So, reading the URL parameters. Let's just keep looking around, because from this bit of information here on nested forms, I still don't know what to do. So a couple of things to note. Cool. And this is in our reading a URL parameter. So, okay, this is if we wanted to pass a particular ID for a particular invoice or something, or a user, or we need to add an outlet to the parent layout route. Yeah, okay. So I did add an outlet to my parent, which was the forms navbar. Okay, so that's all the information we have on the docs. So let's go and find more information elsewhere. So what's going on here? So here we have our users component, which has the outlet, which is equal to our forms navbar, the parent, with our outlet in it. Then we have our links to our specific pages in here, which we do. Our link to controlled and uncontrolled. Perfect. And then in our app.js file, what we have is, what are we importing here? We have browser, router, route link, and outlet. So we do not have a link to in here. Do we need a link to? I don't see link being used in here. So okay. So we have our route path, and that's to our parent users. Yeah. We don't have a index. We just have our specific paths, which we have given by our names. So that should work. Route to our forms. Yeah. And then our element is our forms navbar, which contains our outlet. Yes, same as here. Then we have our routes to our individual pages, controlled and uncontrolled. For pig iron, I'm going to add in the // just because that's the... Okay, so we don't want that to be formatted like that. What happens if I save now? It doesn't format it like that. So maybe this is the way it should be. We're using route children to specify nested routes. What? Where's this route children? Just that there, it is children. Oh. Okay, so maybe we need to read this a bit more. Let's just have a look at where. Route object has the same properties as a route. The children is just an array of child routes. Object-based routes, okay. So this is another way you can do it. React Router version ships with another API for routing that use plain JavaScript objects. So we're doing it this way. Okay, so are we mixing the old and the new approaches? Yes, unlike switching version 5 route path and link to values. Under version 6 routes, elements are automatically relative to the parent route that rendered them. Okay. Okay, so this is an example of a version 6 app. And this is what we have based what we're doing on. So, okay. Do we need to add a forward slash and a star here? And then have our forms element, and then all route path and link to values will automatically be mounted. So then we have our individual paths. Let's see if that made any difference. So we're still not navigating to these components. Okay. Okay, so let's keep reading for another minute. Let's read. Sometimes, you know, I just knew today wasn't a great day, guys, so I apologize. But that's okay, you know. Some days you get great days code and other days you don't, so that's really okay. But like, I just know my brain isn't even going to figure this out. So on the basis of, like, I just know I'm not going to get anywhere. You know the way some days you just get that, like, which on the 100 Days of Code challenge, it's absolutely brilliant to keep you motivated to do the work. So I've done the work, but it's also okay to know when, you know, you need to just call it a day. And I think now is the time. So I'm going to call it a day, guys. Thank you so much for joining me, Lily Code, on another episode of 100 Days of Code. And I'll figure out about routing in React and forms in React and nested links in React as well. And perhaps I'll go back to Max's course just for his section on forms and on links and nested links. So we can see what the new approach is to do this, because Sean Wassells' course is slightly outdated and he's still using version 5 of React Router DOM, which there has been a lot of changes in up until version 6. And this is my first introduction to all of these concepts, so I don't really have the knowledge to be able to differentiate what the right path is. And I could do research and figure it out. I mean, that is what you should do as a programmer. But today just isn't the day for it. So I'll continue with it tomorrow and I'll have a bit more pep in my step and be able to figure this out for you guys. So thanks so much for joining me, Lily Code. Have a lovely day, guys. Be kind to yourselves and just enjoy your day. And thank you so much for joining me. So peace, guys.